just over a day until it all begins. Crazy we're at this point now, but really looking forward to seeing the 2022 season get started. I'll do a very short team update, like 10 seconds short, because this is the team and it hasn't changed from last video except maybe one rookie. So that's it. But we have gotten news on a few rookies. McCartan will play, Gibcus will, Hoff as well. Hayes, it sounds like he'll play. So that's all good to hear. But for this video, I wanted to look into, I guess, the general sentiment from the SuperCoach community, which is that everyone has the same team. Where's the variety? And it's not wrong. Every team I see looks so similar, but why is that? I think it's been said a lot and most would understand, but simply put, it's the rookies. The video could end right here because it's as simple as that, but we really haven't been given much at all, especially in defense. At least in the forward line, we can stack up on mid prices to offset the rookie shortage there, but defense, we've been given next to nothing. Gideon Coleman would have been a great mid-pricer for us, but him going down was real unfortunate and it stuffed things up. He'd probably be my D5 right now. Now you might be thinking, okay, fair. Our structures can't be too different because we're lacking rookies. But what about the players? Everyone has picked the exact same players on each line. Is anyone going to pick a pod? My thinking on that is the players we pick to start the season. Goes without saying, we want great, consistent scoring output. Players that have friendly roles that will benefit their SuperCoach scoring. And of course, we want players that are durable, because we need these guys scoring output for a full season, a full 22 games. We can trade in a pod sometime during the season and we'll only need them for 16, 15, even 10 or less games, depending on when we trade them in. And I look at these premiums and their price brackets, let's say from Lloyd to Crisp here. Zeeble, not a fan of. His scoring output really dipped when Hall became main distributor, and now Luke McDonald is playing off halfback again, so there are concerns there with his ceiling. And then you have Tom Stewart, who's perfectly fine, but a little bit of an interrupted preseason coming off injury. I just feel safer with someone like Lloyd or Crisp. Rich is also fine. He played all 22 last season. He is getting up there in age though, and again, I just feel safer having Lloyd or Crisp. It's not to say don't pick these guys, but it's just personal preference. And then you go down to around the Ridley, Short, Whitfield price, because they're the most common around that mark. Dawson's just over them, but he's under an injury cloud, and I think still in doubt to play round 1. Heppel I don't see being top 6 or 8 defender. Luke Ryan, he's always pretty solid, but his scoring output does fluctuate. He can have stretches where it looks like he's an absolute must-have, but then he can also have stretches where you wish you never had him in your team. So he's someone that will drop in price at some point and you can pick him up mid-season. Bailey Dale is another that some are looking at, but I feel like with the Dogs distribution of halfback, they've got Caleb Daniel, Bailey Williams. They share the ball a lot in their backline, so I feel like his ceiling's a little capped, and I just feel better picking someone like Short or Ridley, and of course Whitfield. Hewitt's an interesting one because we don't really know what his ceiling is. Walsh yet to come back. He's played primarily as a tagger, and he's come to Carlton with the opportunity to be a more offensive player. So there's plenty of upside there, and at his price, he just fits the structure. The midfield is a line I don't think we can afford to mess with. I learned that the hard way, picking Zorko a couple of years ago. But this year, we're picking 3 or 4 mid-premiums. I just think you have to pick at least 2 of McRae, Steele, Took, or Clary. These guys are the best of the best, the most consistent. Clary has a little bit more variance than the other 3, but these 4 are the best of the best. Took did just break out last season, but the reason I have him up there with the other 3 is that I think he's established himself as one of the best mids in the comp. He's just got so much consistency, one of the hardest workers in the league, and last season he didn't go under 30 touches from round 6 onwards. He is as reliable as it gets. Then you go down the list, and next up is Marcus Bontempelli, only owned by 12%. He can also have a bit of variance in his scoring. Of course, he had that unreal stretch from rounds 4 to 15. But Dunkley was out from rounds 7 to 17, and when he came back, 3 of Bontempelli's last 6 scores were under the ton. So how much does Dunkley affect his scoring? He also did have some shoulder strapping throughout the back end of the season, so I don't know how much that affected him. I don't know, but he can drop those 90 or 80 scores, so he's more of a chance than the top mids to drop in price. Next up is Jared Lyons, very reliable for us last year, but I think his CBAs have dropped a bit, and at top dollar I'd rather pick the mids around him. Mitchell and Walsh, there might have been a little more variety in the midfield if those 2 weren't dealing with their respective injuries. Laird, unfortunately, he's out for a bit. Merritt, his ceiling just isn't that great. And then you have his teammate Darcy Parish right under him, who I'd much rather pick over him. I'm definitely not opposed to selecting Parish, but the question with him is, how does he deal with a tag? We saw it a couple of times late last year against Adelaide and GWS, where he got tagged, and it affected him quite a bit, especially in that GWS game. There's no doubts about his ceiling. He shows up in the big games, a couple of 160s there, a 190 against Geelong, so we know what he can do. But if he gets tagged and it affects him, we could see a pretty nice drop in price. Guthrie had a great 2021, but at his price, I'd rather Parish for that ceiling. Wines, Brownlow medalist, only owned by 4% of sides. Thing is with him is he is a bit of a butcher. So I think at some point during the season he's going to have a high clanger game where his dream team is much higher than his SuperCoach, and he has a bit of a price drop and we can pick him up at some point during the season. Callum Mills has been dealing with injury, so I'd stay away from him as a starting selection. Petrarca, Norm Smith medalist, owned by 11%. As a Petrarca owner last season, it was a bit of a roller coaster. Some games he showed that ceiling and showed exactly why I started with him, but there were plenty of games where he was an absolute butcher and that SuperCoach score did not match with his Dream Team score, and it was really frustrating because it really seemed like he made an impact, but because he turned it over so much, his score just wasn't good enough. So I wouldn't start him for that reason. I think, like Wines, he'll have a couple of those games where he just absolutely butchers it, which will trigger a price drop. And lastly, a couple of the guys around the 580 mark, Brayshaw and Kelly. Brayshaw's time on ground is still a bit of a concern. Can he truly match it with the top mids if he doesn't get enough time on ground? So I guess that's a question you can ask about the Brayshaw selection. And Josh Kelly, he's had the reputation of being injury prone, although he played 21 last season, so maybe that's all past him. We've seen what he can do in the past, so maybe it is a risk worth taking at 580k. But if it means not picking one of those top 4 mids, I probably wouldn't do it. Paddy Dangerfield I'll talk about real quick. This isn't the Paddy of previous seasons. He's getting up there in age, a lot more variance in his scoring, he can put up a couple of quiet ones. I just think there's better starting options. And real quick, a couple of the mid-prices, Ral and Berry, very much popular selections. I think with these guys, we see them as stepping stones, so it's just a matter of when we trade them out and who we trade them to, and that will be all the difference. The Rucks I just wouldn't mess with at all. I'd just pick 2 of Gawn, Darcy and Grundy, set and forget. And the forward line, Dunkley, there is no universe where you should be fading him. Duncan, he's getting up there in age and he's dealing with some calf issues, so I'd stay away from him as a starting selection. Taranto, he'll be playing a little more forward until Green comes back, so he's an upgrade target. Hawkins, no, he's key forward. Stringer, I think he's been dealing with injury as well, so I'd stay away from starting him. Dusty always goes off against Carlton, but then he has a stretch where he drops off and drops in price. It just happens every year. I should have followed that rule last year, but I thought it'd be different, so no, I wouldn't start him. Treloar, the biggest question with him is, can you trust him for 22 games? I just don't think so. So I see him as an upgrade target. Team English, not the worst. I'd wait and see on him. If he can string it together for a few games, then maybe look to jump on board. But it's SuperCoach, you do have to take some risks. So if you are starting 3 forwards, might not be a bad F2. Degoe's had a couple of interruptions in the pre-season. Zach Bailey still playing too much forward for me. Taron Thomas, the upside is there. So if you're starting 3 forwards, again, he's not a bad F2. Heaney's pretty common, but I see him as an upgrade target, playing too much forward. And obviously Butters, Dunkley and Butters, the 2 main guys in that forward line, and for good reason. We're starting to really see how elite Butters can be. So good at winning his own footy regardless of his CBA numbers. So fading Dunkley and Butters just to be different, I don't think that would be a good move. It's definitely understandable to want to see more variety. It can be pretty dull seeing so many different teams that look the exact same. But these common players are getting picked for good reason. We'll just have to see what happens come upgrade season. That's where we'll see some big differences and separation in the ranks. And with a lot of these players, fade at your own peril. I'm scared that starting without Steele is going to really burn me, but we had to sacrifice somewhere because of the rookies. So we'll see how it goes. Looking forward to the season starting. Good luck to everyone for round 1, and see you in the next video.